Hear very well. I got bad headphones.
I can hear you pretty well.
Okay.
But you got a little buzz there.
Okay, welcome everyone. This is Trey Jadlow. I'm on this seventh day of. Hold on, just a minute. I've got two pages open. Sorry. Yeah, 7th day of August here, 2017. We got a new friend here named David Simpson, whom I ran across on the Unbelievable page, and asked him if he would be willing to do a hangout and just talk about our different perspectives, and he very kindly and graciously agreed. So with that, I would say, welcome, David. It's nice to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you as well. Just for the record, this is my brother's room. But anyways.
Okay. Why, are you embarrassed or something?
Oh, just there's all these Hobbit posters and stuff. Anyway.
Oh, I'm sure many in our audience would quite click with that. Okay, so I was wondering, as we get started, usually when I do hangouts with people, I like to know a little bit about them. I wonder if you might give me a little bit of information about yourself, maybe where you live, what you do, how old you are, just any basic facts about your life, and I'll tell you about me.
Yeah, for sure. So my name's David Simpson, as you said. I live in British Columbia. I live in a city near Vancouver. 20 years old. I'm a fourth-year psychology student. I'm actually doing an honors project starting this fall on confirmation bias. So that's one of my interests.
Cool.
So I grew up in, I don't want to get into my story of faith, but I grew up in a fairly conservative evangelical home. I was quite active in the church. I spoke at young adults groups, led my high school Christian club, and through an existential crisis and extended research into philosophy, I eventually became an atheist. But have, as we'll get into, I've rediscovered a emotional attachment to the Christian tradition, and so I still attend church and still find value there. And we'll get the devil's in the details, so we'll get into that later.
Mm-hmm.
That's
okay.
roughly what you wanted?
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, my name is Trey Jadlow. I'm a dental technician in Kansas City in the United States, in Kansas, state of Kansas. I'm a father of 6 children, ages 27 down to 14. And sadly, I'm divorced. My wife left me a few years ago. I have an interest in these issues, but I don't have any formal education. Issues of ultimacy fascinate me. Questions of like origins and meaning and morality and destiny, I think, are just fascinating topics. So I tend to be a type of person. I always say I've got 2 speeds, warp 7 and stone cold 0. If I really like something, I latch onto it. But if I'm bored of something, I can't make myself dig into it. So this is one of those issues that I find to be fascinating. And so I'm a born again Christian. I've been a Christian a little over 30 years now. And I grew up in a Christian home as well. My father was not a professing Christian. My mother was. And at the age of 20, I committed my life to Christ. I didn't really understand what true repentance was and salvation was until I was that age. And so from then on, I've been a committed Christian. But I'm maybe a little different than many Christians. I'm convinced that I had some snarky comments. I'm really snarky on keyboard, but about I really want to live a life that corresponds to reality. And if Christianity is not true, I think it's a waste of time. I think that we should live our lives with that which is true, not what we would like the truth to be. And so I'm very happy to engage and look at those difficult issues that are I'll go along with the Christian religion, and I'm very happy to change my view if you can demonstrate that my perspective is incoherent. And so I always tell my interlocutors that I'm very open-minded, very happy to change my view because I don't care to believe something that's a lie. And so I'm a real big fan of thinking through things through and owning your ideas. I mean, I tell this to people all the time, and I teach a Sunday school class in my church, and it's like I tell the young people, it's the high school and college classes, it's very important that you own your ideas. You can't live your parents' faith. You cannot just to say, yeah, I'm going to believe this and hold to it because that's what my family is held to. You've got to stare whatever doubt or difficulty you have in the face and check it out and see if it's true, because it's really no good. And you know, I don't know if you're familiar with your generation. There's a great growth of skepticism within your demographic. In the United States, they call them the nuns, and they're not necessarily, they're not necessarily atheists, but they're non-religious. They're non-religious affiliated, and that's kind of what you remind me of. Although you would call yourself an atheist, but you conduct yourself very much like a nun. I think that that demographic is growing at such a great speed because my generation has become very flabby in what they believe, and they repudiate philosophy, they repudiate theology, they repudiate intellectual pursuits in the mind, and they say we need to. They'll say things like doctrine divides, but Christ unites, and they'll say we just want to preach Jesus, and that's all we want to worry about. And the problem is that
is a doctrine.
Yes, well, indeed, it is a doctrine, and it's a very facile doctrine. That is in one sense it's profound, but it's not good enough just to know that. I know that, you know, I don't know if you know, in the book of Hebrews, the writer of Hebrews is rebuking his audience because they're accustomed to milk and not to meat, and that's what we live in today. Most Christians are incredibly ignorant about their faith, and they view the mind as something that's nasty almost. And I think that was partially grew out of this whole thing of the fundamentalist movement and dispensationalism in the 20th century, which basically said, oh, well, Jesus is returning in a few years, so we don't need to go to college or get an education. And it literally has hamstrung the church. So my hope is to be able to bring some semblance of deep, thoughtful inquiry back to the Christian realm, and where we can talk about these things and haggle over them, and be able to, like I said, own the ideas, and in a sense what Plato would call saving the phenomenon of existence. I believe that our societies in all of the industrialized world are headed toward a dark age, in my view. And I think there's an anti-intellectualism that pervades not only the church, but even in science in many ways. And I am pleading for a return of careful inquiry into mind, and hoping that can bring us to a point where we can think deeply about things of long term. Everybody thinks about just today. That's all we're thinking about. You know, almost every industrialized nation is strapped with significant debt, and also they have a negative fertility rate, which means they're having fewer children that can replace them. And what happens when you have a negative fertility rate is your average age of that population grows slowly, and the first country that's going to get hit with that is going to be Japan, because they've had a very low fertility rate. I'm sorry.
Austria is pretty bad too, but yeah, Japan has had a
and so I mean, can you imagine what their economy will look like when the average age is 70 years old? Right now, they sell more diapers for adults than they do for children.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So there's a dark age that's descending on the entire Western world, and I'm worried about it. I mean, I really am concerned about it. And I think, but the thing that I think is a remedy to that is having something what's called a meta-narrative, which is, you're familiar with mythology and great, you know, ancient Greek and Roman cultures. You know, we like to ridicule them and say how silly it was to think that they believed, but we don't really realize that the reason that they had stories that they had is because that was the thing that held the fabric of culture together. In other words, it brings all the diversities of every who's a part together to think on the same level on something outside of themselves. And what it does is the greatest question, in my view, one of the greatest questions of Western philosophy has been, how do you make unity out of diversity? I don't know if you're familiar with the United States. Our country's motto is E pluribus unum, which means
out of many, one.
It's unity out of diversity. When you go to university, you are going there to learn ostensibly, how to make unity out of diversity. That's what the word means. And this is something that was just standard fare throughout the entire history of Western culture until the last couple of 100 years, where we've just said, oh, we don't need that. And now all we celebrate is diversity.
Yeah,
And that,
not
and
unity. Yeah,
diversity is beautiful as long as it it coheres into a unity. Because if you have diversity without unity, you have disintegration by definition. And that's the thing that concerns me, is everybody's crazy about diversity, but they don't stop and think. They can't see the forest for the trees. We need to all work together as a country, as example. We need to have the same common goals. Doesn't mean we all need to be the same. Doesn't mean we all have that same skin color. Doesn't mean we any of that stuff. But there needs to be some kind of unifying meta-narrative, which is like a big story that unifies people together. And so that's what mythology did. And and even though it was a lie, it served, in fact, an odd way. It served as a function of unifying the culture. So,
well, if I can just jump in there with some agreement, I've agreed with almost everything you've said. I'm not sure I share your pessimism about Western culture, though there are things I'm worried about. And you brought up some good ones. The declining birth rate is definitely one of them. But I want to jump on some agreement with what you just said, as far as the utility of mythology. So as you say, the ancient Greeks in many ways were brought together by the fact that they had these common stories, these common symbols, and kind of mythological framework that served them well. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. And that's actually one of the things that I see as valuable in Christianity, even though I think that the myths of Christianity are no more true than the myths of Greek mythology, although there are historically accurate bits to it. Like, I certainly think there was a Jesus and there was a Paul and there was a Babylonian exile and so forth. But I think that the theological elements in Christianity are fare no better than Zeus or the other ancient mythologies. But that doesn't mean it's without value. And so one other thing I disagreed with, one of the few things actually I disagreed with in your in what you just said, was that Christianity, you didn't quite say it like this, but you almost paraphrased C.S. Lewis, maybe unintentionally, but C.S. Lewis once said, if Christianity is true, it's of utmost importance, and if it's false, it's of no importance. I think the first part of that's true, but I'm not convinced that the second is. I think that if the theological claims of Christianity are false, I think it very well may still be very important. It certainly is to me. I think that despite the fact that I do treat Christian theology as a myth, I view it as a myth, that doesn't mean it's useless or that it has no insight. I mean, these stories are overflowing with ethical and existential implications that you could have arrived at them independently through just philosophy, but well, what the heck? We are beings that like stories, that like narratives, to use your word. We like frameworks, and there's nothing wrong with using them in that capacity. I mean, I could go on, so maybe I'll get your thoughts on that, and we can.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, I'd like to address that idea about ethical. You're happy. The Christianity provides an ethical framework that can kind of help cohere society, and you think that's a good thing. And you said that
I didn't quite say that, but
okay.
Maybe I'll just quickly clarify. So, just me personally, this is not all atheists, or I don't think that my ethical views derive from Christianity. This is a very subtle distinction I want to make. I try to derive my ethical beliefs based on moral philosophy.
Yes.
All right. So I would roughly, I'm a utilitarian. No, I want a lot of caveats there. It's moral philosophy is very complicated, but I'm somewhere in the consequentialist tradition. I think that maximizing human well-being is the goal of ethics, broadly speaking, or sentient well-being in general. I mean, I think that animals can be included in that as well. But so I don't say, okay, the Bible says this, therefore this is what's moral. As far as the way the Bible relates to ethics for me is the Bible is more of a mentor, you could say, especially Jesus. So, if I have a mentor who teaches me, I don't take his words as all true. It's there to challenge me. I don't say my mentor said it, therefore it's true, or therefore it's moral. I say, okay, look, I'm going to listen to my mentor. I'm going to try and learn from it. And if he says something I don't agree with, then I'm just not going to agree with it. So anyways, I just wanted to clarify that. I know it's a subtle point. But.
Well, and I was going to continue on and say that. So you said that there is an ethical utility toward or for Christianity, and you said that they could be derived from philosophy otherwise. And then you kind of when you answered again, you kind of clarified it and said that you're consequentialist in that you believe that maximizing of well-being and the minimizing of suffering, particularly of sentient creatures. Are you a fan of Sam Harris?
Yeah, he was one of my first kind of introductions to moral realist thinking. Now, there are problems with the moral landscape, and he deliberately dodges many of the philosophical, what shall I say, thorns of consequentialism. And I realize that it's more complicated than maybe he would like to admit. But he definitely was a kind of a first step. And now I'm reading more serious guys like Derek Parfit, or people who get into the thorns of some of the more complicated implications of consequentialism. But no, I definitely was very influenced by Sam Harris.
Okay, because I have very, very, very little respect for the man. I can't understand why anybody buys his books. But really, well, it shocks me. These new atheists are to me, are pathetic thinkers. But I'm not saying he's not a nice man or anything like that. I just don't think.
Tell me what you really think. Yeah. One area I will agree, and I've already granted some problems with Sam Harris, but one area where I can see definitely why you'd say that is their responses to the traditional proofs of God, or the traditional arguments for the existence of God. Harris's treatment of them in the Letter to a Christian Nation is, not impressive, to put it lightly.
Okay, well, I'm speaking to his moral philosophy. All right. Okay. So basically, what he says in the moral landscape is that science can give us moral code as we determine that which maximizes flourishing and minimizes suffering. But when he makes that statement, he's begging the question, because the very thing that he is supposedly giving us through science, he assumes as a foundation. In other words, he begs the question. He commits a petitio principii fallacy. So he says, if you assume that the goal is maximizing flourishing and minimizing suffering, that's the very thing he's supposed to be answering. So in other words, from an atheistic perspective, why is there such a moral imperative for the sanctity of existence? From your perspective, that's a question for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to answer for all of Harris's views. I mean, I could maybe imagine what he would say to that, but my views don't necessarily align with his. If you're asking me, my moral philosophy, I think, is more nuanced. So you use the word imperative. I do think that speaking of moral imperatives on an atheistic or naturalistic worldview is problematic. I'm not sure how to coherently say, here's what it means to have a moral imperative. I think that you can speak coherently about moral goods. All you have to grant for there to be moral goods, or even just, we can even throw away, I'm actually happy to throw away the words moral or moral realism, consequentialism, and so on. I think we can just stick to the facts of experience. Okay. The bedrock fact of experience for me, and this is frankly as obvious as cogito ergo sum, the bedrock fact of experience that matters is it is more pleasant to be happy than it is to suffer. I'm as certain of that as I'm certain of anything. When I am happy and when I'm flourishing, when I'm experiencing positive emotion, that is a good thing. If the word good means anything, that's good. Like it's pleasant, it's enjoyable. I don't know. People will challenge me. How do you know that it's good? It's like at that point, there's really nothing you can say. I mean, this is as obvious as the fact that I exist. I mean, it's trivially true. And similarly, the fact that suffering is unpleasant is trivially true. That's a fact if there ever was one. And furthermore, and this is where I will sound like Sam Harris, I think that there are facts of the matter about which actions tend to increase happiness and which actions tend to increase suffering. Sure. And we can speak about those facts, and if you don't want to call those moral facts, I'm not going to argue semantics, but I think I'm happy just to stick to the fact that, you know what, raping women will increase negative outcomes in the world. It will make the world a worse place. I think that's an objective fact. We can talk about it, and maybe we're wrong. Maybe it turns out that rape is actually is good and actually increases well-being. That's probably never going to be demonstrated. I think that we can agree that it's the case that rape increases suffering. And you know what? Giving to the destitute and giving to the poor, that's going to make the world a better place. I think that's trivially true. Now, if you say, but is there some cosmic imperative binding on me to give to the poor, and will I be punished if I don't do it? No. So does that make me a moral?
You're giving a moral imperative, right?
What?
You're giving it a moral imperative, right?
No, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I could ground.
Okay, so what would you do to a rapist?
What would I do to a rapist? I think it would be good to punish him. I think it would make the.
Then you just made a moral imperative.
No, I didn't. I'm saying it would be, when I say it's good, I mean the world will be better if we punish rapists. In the sense that there will.
So you advocate for punishing those who break your moral law?
Do I advocate? Yeah, I do, yeah.
Okay, so you believe in moral law?
I'm not comfortable with the term moral law, but I mean, yes, I think that.
Why not?
Why don't I use the term moral law? I don't know. I'm not convinced that there's a way to ground that. And if someone can convince me,
that's exactly right. But you're wanting to. This is my whole thing. You need to have some thought behind what you believe. Now you're just saying, I just believe it because I just want to believe it. You've got to give any. Let me say this. This is what I say to my atheist friends. Any worldview based on blind, irrational faith is doomed to failure. You can't build a society on that. But that's what you're giving me right now. You just give me a blind.
Okay, well, yes. See, you were with me up until the point that mattered, actually. So everything I said before about, well-being is better than suffering, trivially true. There are facts about which actions maximize it and which actions don't. And so if well-being is better than suffering, and if there are facts about which actions maximize well-being, there are facts about which actions make the world better. And I'm willing to stop right there. There are facts about which actions make the world better. And if you say, well, gosh, I don't care if I'm making the world a worse place. Well, there's nothing I can do. I can't. There is no argument, frankly, theistic or atheistic, that I can give to stop the psychopath in his tracks. You can always say, look, I don't care. And the same is true for, I don't want to change the subject, but the same is true for facts of science too. Someone can just say, well, I don't care about evidence. It's anyone can say that. Similarly, anyone. But
you can't live according to the standards. What you're doing is you're saying you're kind of separating the world into two groups. You're saying, well, I don't want to tell anybody what to do, but then again, I want to throw them in jail if they don't do what I think is wrong or right. And you've got to have a reason for that. In other words, I agree with. Yeah, I wasn't saying anything earlier on because. I'm thinking to myself, I'm just going to let him finish what he's saying, but you're basically doing the same thing Sam Harris is doing. You're just giving me a just so story. And just so stories are not how you build societies. In other words, you're saying it's a brute fact that it's a good, that existence is holy. Essentially, that's what you're saying.
Oh, no, I would never say anything like that.
No, I know you wouldn't use those words, but tell me how you are okay with existence not being holy.
I don't even know. Holy means set apart or something, or sacred. Or
and you think human life is holy, right?
No,
set apart. You don't think it's set apart?
No, I wouldn't use that word. I certainly wouldn't use it in constructing my consequentialist framework.
I know, because it sounds too Christian.
Yeah. Now to be clear, actually, I will say this. I'm willing to say human life is holy. Maybe if I'm having a kind of a poetic conversation. If I say human life is holy, I might mean it in the same sense that I say my wife is the most. I don't have a wife, but if I had one, I would. If I was a good husband, I would say my wife is the most beautiful woman alive.
Yes, but yes, no. Are you gonna wax eloquently as you throw someone in jail for not being holy?
No. So that's why I'm trying to keep the waxing poetic over here and the consequentialist.
Yeah, but you can't do that. You got to do. You got to live in a way the same that you are emotional. Yeah, but you're inconsistent. That's what I just pointed out. You got to be consistent. Your poetry's got to have some feet on the pavement to make any sense.
What do you mean by feet on the pavement? So poetic metaphors have to. Well, I'm actually not even convinced that's true. Most poetic metaphors correspond to something. So if I say my wife is the most beautiful woman in the world, it's corresponding to the fact that I love her more than any other woman in the world.
Yes, but when somebody rapes your wife, you poetically say, "You're down, boy."
Oh, yeah.
It's the same thing. It's just one side of the coin of the other.
You're down, boy. So I feel like we're bouncing between two different things here. So if we're going to stick to a discussion of consequentialist ethics and whether or not they're coherent, I think we should leave, poetry and sacred, holy. At least for me. I'm just not. They're going to bounce off if I'm in that zone. If I'm in the zone of what's true about ethics.
For me, poetry is just putting beautiful words to that which is real. For you, poetry is just lying about that which is real. But then again, you want to make it real at the same time as well. You want to say that your wife really is beautiful, and you want to say that her really is bad.
Really is bad, and just in the sense that it's maximizing an unpleasant sensation.
That's right.
I mean, that's all I mean by bad. I don't have in mind, you know, that she's violating some categorical imperative or a moral law, to use your term. I don't think that those are the right words to use. I certainly don't think they can have an ontology underlying them. You could maybe use, anyways.
Okay, but you're acting as though there are these standards that really do exist. But then you're saying, I don't want to call them standards because it makes it look too much like Christianity or something like that. And or
it makes it look like moral Platonism. And actually, I should just put this in here too. Like a moral Platonist?
Yeah.
I think you really want me to. And I'm resisting your attempts. I
don't know that I'm a Platonist either, but I'm just saying that there are standards.
I'm certainly not. But I have not used the word standard or moral law or.
You haven't used the word, but you're talking all about it. In other words,
how about you use the terms that I'm using? So I think so I describe my moral theory. Frankly, I'm willing to throw away the term moral theory, but I describe my stance on this. And you attach words like standard and moral law, and then there's ontological baggage that gets carried in there that I don't want. So,
okay.
If I'm speaking, you know, if I stick to what I can defend, if I stick to what I think can be grounded in a naturalistic framework,
which you haven't done yet, but yeah.
Well, you can say that. I mean, well,
is it objectively true that humanity is special?
Define special.
They should be women should not be raped.
Okay, so that's a different claim. So humanity is special is nothing that I've said. Now, should not be raped. I wouldn't say that. I mean, I wouldn't, or I don't think that can be grounded ontologically.
Tell me what you would say and how you would ground it. I mean,
so what I would say is
you're doing a Mexican hat dance here.
Oh, I know. It's the Italian in me, man. My dad's half Italian, so there's an old joke. It's, you know, how do you shut up an Italian? You tie his hands behind his back. Anyway, so what can I do?
No, I was speaking metaphorically, not the way you're doing stuff. Just go ahead, tell me.
Oh, you mean like my? Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. So here's what I can say. Here's what I can ground. Not even ground it naturalistically, just ground it in the facts of experience. Rape causes suffering. That's trivial. I mean, we agree on that. That's a fact. That's a fact if there ever was one. Rape causes suffering. It's an empirical fact. It's one that no one's going to dispute. Suffering is unpleasant. Mm-hmm. Suffering is a negative sensation, and rape causes it. Mm-hmm. There is negative value, and it's objective. This is a fact of the matter. There is negative value in rape because it makes the world a worse place. And by worse, I just mean more suffering. There's more suffering in the world. That's a bad thing. Suffering is a bad thing. You're assuming
the sanctity of existence. I don't care.
No, I'm not
saying the same things over and over.
No, I don't. I didn't say sanctity of existence. You're saying sanctity of existence. I don't.
Is suffering bad? Objectively bad?
Yes, it's a fact of the matter that
creatures.
Yes, it's a fact of the matter that suffering is bad. It's unpleasant to experience.
Okay, so creatures should be treated with respect.
Yeah,
I don't. Saying?
I don't think I can ground shoulds. No, you see, here you're doing it again. You're trying to, you know, sneak in the word.
I'm just trying to. You're the one who's playing games. I'm just trying to be honest and open and say you believe that existence should be valued. I think the whole world.
I think we're going to have to move on because we're just talking in circles. I have not used the word should. I don't use the word existence.
I'm a driving force, and you're scattering. That's the problem.
No, I've been saying the same thing over and over again.
I know. You have been dancing around it over and over and over.
And you bring in the words should and.
You're the one that's talking about should. You're saying people.
Really, I did. I said the word should. Well, those of you who are watching can rewind and see if I said that because if I did,
saying should people not rape women?
I don't think I can ground a should, and I've been very clear. Okay, yeah, you know what? This is not going.
But you're going to throw them in jail if they do it.
Yes. It's better that I do that. I can ground better.
Your view is utterly incoherent. I mean, you just don't want to say the words because you know that
no. Look. I have not used the words should or should not or oughts or anything like that because I am not convinced that they can be grounded. Some atheists do, and I'm willing to hear them out. And but I have not used those words. You are imposing.
Listen, my friend.
Yeah, go ahead.
You are standing for a moral objective of treating people with charity, and whether you call it a should or a do-rock, it doesn't matter. That the term doesn't matter. The concept is there of treating life, those who can feel, as if they are special. And if you're going to do that, you've got to come up with some standard of that. So in other words, if this is a valueless universe, basically you're saying that unintentionality intended intention. You're violating the law of identity. If there's such a thing as value.
There is not a single sentence that you said that accurately describes what I think. So that, I mean, so, and that's not my problem. I mean, so this is getting really heated and I don't like the way this is going. You are trying to describe, what you're doing is you're trying to describe my view in such a way as to draw theological implications from it. You're not trying to understand what my view actually is. And I get why you're doing that. That's fine. And it's a good tactic to make me say something that I don't believe. But it's not a good tactic for having a conversation. And
okay,
I think
all right.
So I think we should.
I'm not going to bother you about it anymore. Okay, we'll move on.
I think we should probably move on from that. I think that we've said what we think about that.
Okay, so
all right, let's stretch.
Okay, a few jumping jacks and no. Okay, so how about if we talk about the existence of God?
Sure. At some point, I think we could talk about my Christian atheism too. That's a fun one. But the existence of God is a fun one, and that.
Okay.
I'm fairly close to the argument, so I spent a lot of time thinking about them. But we'll see if we'll see if you surprise me.
Okay. So my argument is an analytical one. As I just told one of my Facebook friends, it's also even a scientific one in a sense. But before I begin my argument, I need two fundamental presuppositions for epistemological investigation. I need you to grant me that that the law of non-contradiction is valid. In other words, that coherence or rational coherence is something we need to assume.
Oh yes.
In order to doubt it, we have to assume it. So
yes, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
And then then I also wanted to ask you that you would grant me the basic reliability of sense perception. Hold on, let me get my second.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. All right, the basic reliability of sense perception, because if you can't have any sense perception, we have no connection to the world. And it doesn't mean it's perfect. We have many problems. That's why science is always changing, because we make mistakes, which is okay.
Yes.
All right, so you granted me those two presuppositions now.
Oh, trivially, yeah, for sure, yeah. I mean, grounding them is a fun philosophical problem, but I'm willing to grant them for the sake of argument. I certainly believe both of those things. So yeah, for sure. Yeah.
See my dog in the background.
Yeah, it's a nice dog.
Okay, so all right, so if you grant those two presuppositions, then we will start with, as you mentioned earlier, Descartes' cogito ergo sum.
Yes.
We know that if anything exists, we know that this entire world in which we live could all be a dream. It could all be something that's fake and something that we're imagining. But one thing that we cannot imagine is that we as the inquirer must exist. Otherwise, there's no inquiry.
Yeah. So, just one quick qualifier I'd put on that. I agree, and there's an obvious sense in which it is true and can't not be true. The only thing I would clarify is I'm not convinced there's an I, like a self. What is certain in this moment is that there are conscious experiences, and it's hard to describe them without using the language of I, me, my experiences. But so if I say I exist, what I really mean is there's conscious experience right now.
Who's having that conscious experience?
Oh, it's impossible to describe it without saying words like I and me. I mean, it's built into our language, but.
Well, use another word. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't. Well, yeah, it's going to be an identity word, so it's but that's the only caveat I would make. But I suspect it actually won't matter for your argument. I'm still going to use words. Well, I'm already using the word I, and like the Inquirer and all that. It probably won't matter, but that's just one caveat I'd make.
Okay, so all right. So if I exist, I contemplate myself. I know that I am not self-existent, and if I am not self-existent, then there must be something upon which I depend in order to be. And are you familiar with the principle of causality?
Yes, I'm not sure if I would grant that I can know that I'm not self-existent. I mean, I'm not going to argue that I am.
Okay, well, let me explain why you can't be
Yeah,
self-existent. That which is self-existent cannot be dependent in its existence, because if you're dependent in your existence, you are by definition contingent. In other words, you're dependent on something else and you're not self-existent. Self-existence must be unchanging and not ability to. So when you go outside and you get sunburned or the wind blows your hair, you demonstrate that you're contingent. When you go to the refrigerator and get food to eat, and if you don't have that food, you will die, you are demonstrating that you're not self-existent. So that which is not self-existent cannot exist in and of itself by definition. It's dependent for its existence. Now the principle
it depends. It depends on other things. Like other things can change it. That doesn't necessarily mean that its existence depends on something else. Again, don't worry. So a necessary thing by definition cannot be changed by an outside force or an outside agent. I don't think that follows. Okay. I mean, an outside thing cannot take away its existence if it's not. I mean, those who are watching might get bored by this. Just so for those who are watching, you may not know, a necessary thing is that which. Oh, there you go. So not a big deal, but.
Okay, but it doesn't matter. You're saying that it can be changed, but it cannot be taken out of existence. That's really no different, because both of those mean that it's contingent, it's dependent. By definition, it's not self-existent, it's dependent existence, even if it changes even in the slightest amount. So unless you're going to violate the law of identity, you're going to say something is not what it is, then what you're saying is incoherent. You cannot have dependent existence existing in and of itself. It doesn't make sense.
Yes, I agree with that statement. I'm not. I mean, I could imagine right now a necessarily existing rock that I mean, well, let's play this out. Maybe there's a contradiction that I haven't realized yet. I've never heard the argument quite put like this. So let's work this out. So there's a necessarily existent rock floating somewhere. Now there's a problem with an object being necessarily existent, but we'll work with it. So let's say another rock bumps into it and moves away. It's been changed. Its location is different, but it's still necessarily existent. No,
it's not necessary. It just showed that it was dependent by being acted upon. So it has potentiality. It had the potential to move from one state to another, and instead of, you got to have actuality and potentiality if you want to use Thomistic or Aristotelian language. You cannot have potential being without actual being. And so what you're doing is you're saying this rock has both substance and accidents, or it has actuality and potentiality, which we do. We have a consistency in our character and who we are, but overall, that consistency is an instantiation of humanity, which humanity is something we participate in that is given to us. In other words, we were born. We did not have the state that we have now, and we have both substance and accidents. So, for example, I'm losing my hair. My hair is accidental to me. I can lose my hair and I'll still be Trey. I can lose my arm and my arm is accidental to me. At some point, you're gonna remove enough of me that I'm gonna stop being me at some point, and then my substance will be destroyed.
This is a hairy philosophical problem, and one that I'm not sure where I stand. I mean, I'm not sure that the notion of, because you didn't use this terminology, but necessary and sufficient conditions. Like, so there are some conditions for being you that could not be, that if you took that away, you would no longer be you. But your beautiful flowing hair that I'm sure you once had is not a necessary condition for being you. It's just a nice little slap on. You lose it, you're still you. But figuring out what exactly are the necessary conditions for something to be itself. I mean, Wittgenstein just did away with all that. I mean, he didn't really, view language that way, and I'm not sure that I do either.
But we're not necessary in our being. That's my point. I'm saying that even that part of us that doesn't change does change. Now, I can, like I said, there are different qualities within that our being, but we are not necessary in our being. We once were not. We were born. All of us agree that we were born, and that which is born is not self-existent.
I mean, I should just clarify. A lot of the questions I'm raising are just in the context of you were beginning with cogito ergo sum. You're beginning with sort of the things we can know with certainty. I'm not sure we can know with certainty that we were born. But like, obviously, I believe that we were born. So I'm just saying,
but you know that you changed, right?
Yeah, I mean, with certainty, I mean, in any given moment, I'm only aware of this moment of consciousness. It could be that all my memories of changing were illusory. I don't.
That's a change. That's a change.
That having illusory memories?
Yeah, that you move from one state to another.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to grant that. I'm not sure if it can be known with certainty, but it can be known with 99.99% confidence. I mean, I'm not going to.
Well, we can't know anything with absolute certainty. I mean, because we got to be omniscient to know that.
Except our own existence, or the.
Well, no, I can't even know that with absolute certainty. I can just know it more than I know anything else. In other words, the only one who can absolute certainty is that which knows everything, and none of us know everything. So I would say that faith is a necessary condition to contingent existence by definition. But I can say that I know that I exist more than I know that I'm talking to you, more than I know that I'm sitting in front of my computer right now. I know that I exist probably more than anything. And my extrapolation for that is that I also know that God exists because I know that I'm not self-existent. Because contingent existence cannot self-exist.
That's the leap that we'll have to talk about. I would say, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't even say this, but I think I can know. So right now I'm looking at an image of a Caucasian face. I have this sense data of a Caucasian face. Mm-hmm. That sense data exists. There is this experience in this moment. I can know that with certainty. It's not coherent. How could I possibly doubt that? But is it 100% certainty? Okay, fine. We don't have to argue about that. I'm sure certain of it. But
sure. And I mean, it may be 99.99999% that you are, but you cannot have absolute certainty. And that's my view, that you cannot have absolute certainty unless you know everything. I mean, there's just got to be. You cannot prove without a shadow of a doubt. You just know that if there's going to be any inquiry, that you know that you got to exist, and you know that you're actually having this conversation now. And that's all that really matters.
I'm not going to bicker about the 0.01. So the leap that matters, of course, is the leap from, okay, fine, you know you're not self-existent. That might be problematic later, but you know you as a being are not self-existent. Therefore, there must be God. And I'm wondering what you mean by God in that context, and how you inferred the attributes of God from the fact that you're contingent.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I remember one of the founding principles that you conceded was the law of non-contradiction.
Oh, you won't hear me doubting that.
Yeah, okay. So something cannot be and not be at the same time and in the same relationship. If something is changing, then it is not self-existent. Then at some point in time, that thing had to be and not be at the same time in the same relationship. It had to make itself before it was. That's the whole point. If you grant the law of non-contradiction, then you've got to extrapolate via modus ponens that, if the fact that I exist and my existence implies aseity, then aseity must exist. It's a logical proof. And it's not something that's open to probability. Now, remember, I said you can't know anything without absolute certainty. But if there's anything that I know, if I'm granting the law of non-contradiction, then I know analytically.
Syllogisms
it's not it's not a probability argument like evidentialists give.
Yeah.
And it's not. I don't believe in presuppositional. I'm honestly familiar with that either. I'm a strong opponent to. I am very much opposed to presuppositional because it begs the question. I'm a classicist.
Yes.
So I believe that we know that God exists by rational induction. It is a rational argument in a sense because I'm using the law of non-contradiction to demonstrate the point that contingent existence cannot, by definition, exist in and of itself. And I could not be and not be at the same time in the same relationship. Therefore, God must exist.
Wait, God must exist. I mean, so what your argument does demonstrate, or at least I'm willing to grant that it demonstrates, is that there must be at bottom something that is necessarily existent. There must be some self-existent entity.
And that's all I'm arguing at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, so maybe I'll just cut to the chase, because I was going to kind of see how far you got. But I mean, my view on this is a version of the cosmological argument. Maybe something like the it's not the Kalam one. It's not that one's really popular nowadays. But it's not that one.
Well,
I mean, so this is the. I'll say what actually was the thing that made me lose faith, made me unconvinced of the validity of the cosmological argument. Just that it seems to me perfectly coherent and possible that the universe is self-existent. The whole of space-time is self-existent. So I wish I had an object with me, but you know, should I get into that too? The most popular notion of time now among philosophers and certainly physicists is the B theory, that all moments in time exist. I don't know if you're familiar with philosophy of time, that all moments of time exist. The past exists and the present exists. This is Einstein's view, Hawking's view. It's a very popular view nowadays. And it's possible, and I'm not going to argue that it's the case, but there's no contradiction in saying that the universe and all moments in it exist necessarily. I don't see any reason to deny that. Now, do I believe that's true? I have no idea. That's not for mere mortals like me. Maybe Einstein.
Do you deny change then, therefore?
I mean, change clearly is a something we observe, but someone who is a B theorist of time would say that that change is an illusion of human consciousness. That if we could view the world four-dimensionally, we could see the Big Bang, we could see the moments when stars first formed, we could see the dinosaurs, we could see the moments of human evolution, and we could see the future. That all these moments, so change, I mean, are there different moments of time where the universe is arranged differently? Yes, there are different moments of time in that sense. But is there I really should get an object or something, but 1 second.
Sure.
Actually, that's silly. I won't do that. If this is the whole of time, and here's the Big Bang, and here's the end, we feel like, we're moving along. And that's a perfectly respectable philosophical view, but we feel that we are moving along. But many philosophers would say that's just an illusion. In reality, all moments of time exist. Now, again, I'm not necessarily defending this view. I really don't know if I'm qualified to, frankly, to decide. But there's no contradiction there. I don't see any contradiction.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Does a person who holds to the B theory of time, do they look both ways before they cross the street?
Oh, yes, of course.
But it's not an illusion. It's just something we feel, remember?
Well, of course, but I mean, feelings matter immensely to us. I mean, they're still going to, as a matter of fact.
Yes, but why would you look both ways in the street if change is an illusion?
I mean, change is an illusion in the sense that it's not fundamental. It's not fundamentally a part of reality. All moments of time exist.
Okay, if it's not fundamentally a part of reality, why do you act like it is?
I'm not quite sure what you're asking. I mean, so it is still a fact that if you walk across the street and get hit by a car, you will die. I mean, it is certainly true that the way we talk, the way we describe our experiences is not compatible with the B theory, just because we have this illusion. It's very much a part of the way we think. And so we speak in terms. So the other one's the A theory. The A theory is the common sense view that most people hold if they haven't researched it. And again, many philosophers hold to it too. I'm not disrespecting it. It's a perfectly coherent view. I don't think
we shouldn't respect the B theorists that they live in a way that doesn't correspond to what they say is true. That's my point.
I mean, the B theory is not a theory of what our experience feels like. Our experience certainly feels like the A theory is true. I mean, there's no way around it.
Our feelings need to correspond to what's true. That's my whole point.
It is true that our conscious experience progresses linearly. That is true. And consciousness.
Does it really do so, though?
It really does. Time doesn't do it. If the B theory is true, again, I have no idea if it is. But and unlike someone like Dan Dennett, I do think that conscious facts are a kind of fact. It is a fact of the matter. This is what I was saying earlier with suffering and well-being. It is a fact of the matter that I am having a conscious experience right now. And by the way, if you want a real good argument against naturalism, the best one on offer right now is consciousness. I think that's the biggest problem. I mean, not just for naturalism, but for any view. I mean, dualism is fraught with problems too. But
naturalism is the most stupid of all views.
Well, tell me what you really think. they're all stupid. I mean, we can talk about we can talk about consciousness if you want, but that's another.
Yeah, naturalism can't account for consciousness. It's just a just so story.
Oh, they're all just
changing conversations.
They're all just so stories at this point.
No, they shouldn't. We shouldn't be though. We shouldn't be just accepting just so stories.
I mean, there are serious scientific models of consciousness right now, and I'm not convinced that any of them is true. But there are attempts to postulate theoretical explanations of how.
Yeah, the Christian one.
The Christian one. Well, that's an interesting one. I'm not even sure what the Christian one is. I mean, there's the Cartesian one, which is probably what most Christians, in fact, think. But does the Bible, Frank? Oh, this is. Well, we could go off topic. I don't know how far I want to go.
Yeah, we can. It's fine. It's just conversation.
Yeah, it's just conversation. I mean, it seems to me, and that the Bible's view on, or at least the Bible doesn't have one view. There's different authors, but many authors of the Bible seem to have a view that's not materialistic, but that the human essence is one. That there's just and the soul is just a metaphor for the inner man, or for inner experience. I mean, the Old Testament is infamously unclear on the afterlife and the nature of the soul and questions like that. And in the New Testament, you get some things like Paul saying, okay, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Okay, there's some sort of division that can be made. But yeah, I mean, I don't think the Bible has one view on what the soul is.
I think that there's a progressive revelation that occurs within the Old Testament. I mean, the Old Testament Jews certainly believed in a final judgment.
Towards the end in books like Daniel, yeah. Maybe we shouldn't get into the whole quoting every Old Testament book, but I mean, the book of Ecclesiastes is quite infamously agnostic on this question.
No, it's not. At the end.
At the end it says there is judgment, but actually most scholars don't think that Ecclesiastes was written as a whole. They think that there were
most scholars are naturalists. So why would you?
Well, not necessarily, but this is another delicious area of disagreement, I'm sure. I think that, and this will just maybe sound like bigotry, I don't know if I should say it, but I think that naturalists are, or at least people who don't believe in the Bible as revelation, are more qualified to study it seriously as historians. And I know you may object to that, but
so people who are not scientists are more qualified to study science than the scientists because they're not biased.
No, I just mean that so let's use an analogy more direct to this. If someone is a Hindu and they are studying the Bhagavad Gita and they believe that every word of the Bhagavad Gita was inerrant and that every word of it is true, and they say, well, look, it's all true. So of course Krishna floated and turned into a glowing being before.
But you're presupposing that the person who is expounding it is unwilling to look at other views.
Not unwilling, just they are going to be less objective in looking at it. I mean, I think that's
okay.
Almost.
So do you think somebody who doesn't believe in the supernatural studying the Bible is going to give an objective standard of what the Bible is teaching?
I think they're in a better position to do it.
Yes. because that's where you come from, and you're doing the very same thing that you are criticizing others for doing.
What is that? Criticize? I mean, so
imposing your worldview upon the text because of your a priori, unjustified presuppositions.
Well, I would argue quite justified a posteriori propositions or presuppositions, which at that point they're not presuppositions anymore.
Okay. Well, let's get back to David. Let's get back to this then. This is pertinent to this. So, you said that you concede that there must be a self-existent creator? Is that putting words in your mouth?
Well, creator, no. Something must be self-existent. It perfectly. And
Did contingent existence come into being?
What? Oh, I'm not sure. I mean, what I was.
Well, what does the word mean?
What I was trying to say earlier with my discussion of the B theory of time is that it's perfectly coherent to say that the universe exists necessarily. Is it true? I don't know. But
the universe is not necessary in its existence because the universe changes, right?
Well, no. So that this was the whole point of my. So I want you to try to not to be ready with a response to what I'm saying, or to be where's the flaws? Just try to understand what I'm saying, because this is hard stuff for both of us, right? We're talking about very abstract problems. So on the B theory, all moments in time exist. So the dinosaurs exist in a very real sense. They haven't ceased to exist. I mean, they have as far as our experience is concerned, but the dinosaurs exist, the Big Bang exists, all moments in time exist. And as far as our experience is concerned, yeah, there's this movement through time, but that's not actually fundamentally a part of the physical, well, it's part of the physical universe because we're a part of the physical universe. But on this view, it's perfectly possible to say that all moments in time, all of the universe just exists necessarily.
But you demonstrate that's not coherent because the person who holds that looks both ways before they cross the street. It's incoherent. It doesn't correspond to reality.
Well, I don't know. I'm not saying I know this view to be true. So there are two separate claims that a B theorist would make. The first is that as far as fundamental reality is concerned, there's no progression through time. There's just all moments of time exist simultaneously. And this, by the way, is consistent with the best physics we have right now. Einstein said that the difference between the past, the present, and the future is just an illusion. And similarly, Hawking said that the first moment in time is like the South Pole. There's no before it, no after it, and all moments after are just like moving up in latitude. There's no fundamental.
Well, that's a movement. I mean, that's not a B theory time there.
The movement, our perception of movement up it.
But if it's a real movement, perception, it's movement.
Yeah, there isn't movement in the fundamental, in the equations of physics or in the way reality is. The way reality is were we all to die tomorrow. But a B theorist would still, of course, grant that we have conscious experience and that conscious experience proceeds linearly, that it proceeds moment to moment, or at least we perceive it in that way. And you dismiss this as, oh, that's just feelings. Who cares about feelings? Well, feelings are a fact. There's a fact that I feel.
I would say that you would agree that they're not just feelings, that they are factual to us.
They're factual in the sense that it's a fact of the matter that I have this experience. It's a fact of the matter that I have the experience of moving through time. That's a fact. And I'm quite sure of it, that's how my conscious life appears to me. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, I'm not gonna go the Dennett route and deny that I'm conscious. Well, he wouldn't say it like that, but I don't want to caricature him.
Okay. Well, you know what?
We could move on to a different argument, but
I like to just keep my hangouts like to about an hour-ish or so.
That was an hour. There you go. Time flies when you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah, well, I was. I had a very enjoyable time with you. To be honest with you, I was very skeptical. I didn't think you were going to know what you're talking about, and that you were just going to have a boring time. But it was very stimulating, actually, and very enjoyable. I respect the fact that you are thinking about things and that you care about things and are trying to examine the world thoughtfully. I think it's something today that is, it's not done a lot today. I mean, just people don't like to think deeply about things. They're more interested in watching the next movie or getting their next sensual pleasure, whatever that may be. And it seems like contemplation and thoughtfulness are something that is a rarity. So I'm glad to see that, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate your charity and thoughtfulness in interacting with me. I'm kind of, I don't really understand something. I thought Canadians had an accent. You don't have. You sound like you're from Nebraska.
Yeah, no, we don't. Not really.
You don't say. Look,
this is Vancouver here. This is North Seattle. That's what this is.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, no, like not.
But if you go further north, do people get a little bit more of an accent or something?
I don't go north.
Unless you live in Quebec, you get
much.
a accent.
But no, I mean, I've ever talked to it sounded like they're from Nebraska. So.
I mean, I always experience that. It seems like everybody that I hear from Canada, they have zero accent. I mean, they sound like literally. I think Nebraska is like the favorite state for people, probably somewhat Kansas too, to get telemarketers from because we don't have any accent. You know.
We're neutral. We don't have any accent. You guys have the accents.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean,
that was a joke for those of you who are gonna. No, we all have accents, but we sound that we have the same accent, so our accent is invisible to us, of course.
Yeah, but you're right. But I just
If anything, the English have no accent because they invented the language. They're right.
Yeah. Well, no, there's like 30 different accents even in England.
That's true. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's the upper class English accent, which we can't tell the difference. But
according to the general American standard, I mean, you know, if you go to the South, there's a very strong accent. You go to the Northeast, there's a very, well, you go to the East Coast and you go to the Northeast. And
Boston.
Then, you know,
Boston.
Yeah, Boston. Can I buy in New York? I bought a quota, and I love their accent. But anyway, I just thought it was funny because it seems like whenever I talk to somebody from Canada, you sound like me. I mean, it's interesting. Yep. So I guess you're good people because you sound like me.
Of course.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So I'm happy to do this again with you, David. I enjoyed the
There's
conversation.
A lot of stuff we didn't cover, but yeah, no, good stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, sure, there's a lot more to talk about, but I haven't been doing I used to do them a lot, and I haven't done any in a long time. I think I'm getting old and tired or something. Well, I just don't interact that much with people anymore.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sure we can do this again sometime soon. I'm very happy to do it, and I'm sure I'll see you on Unbelievable. And I appreciate the time and wish you all the best.
Yep, you too, sir. All right, we'll see you on the internet, and we'll definitely do this again.
Okay, we'll see you.